This is Brother Medina for Tuesday Seventh-day Adventist, and please let us start with a word of prayer. Loving Father, please be with us as we enter into this presentation. Help everyone listening to understand properly and to make wise decisions to save themselves and their families from destructive vaccines. So help everyone to understand by careful consideration to the evidences that are presented today. In Jesus' holy name we pray, with thanksgiving unto thee. Amen. Well, our study continues from the last television program, and the name of it is Gardasil Danger 3. Gardasil Danger Part 3. And recently, the Ministry of Health had a government program on, and it was claiming that Gardasil was safe and it was 90% effective. This program from the government, in which one Mr. Andy Johnson was the host, this program, we can call it like a stage program. Why? Because the right questions were not asked. Evidences were not presented factually. In other words, questions like, whose study are you relying on? Merck's study or independent study? Can you give us an account of this independent study, what it actually said? Questions like that, which would have shown that Gardasil is very dangerous and wrong, and that the Ministry of Health or any doctor or any Minister of Health or anyone has no evidence that Gardasil is safe for people. Because of this, we need to show you some factual scientific evidence of the dangers of the Gardasil injection. Now, this Gardasil injection is to be given to girls 11, 12, 13, and even as much as small as 9 years old in the United States and other places. And it is supposed to prevent cervical cancer, which can be developed 40 years later to their date. And Gardasil only has an efficacy of 5 years, as they said, but it is really 2.5 years. So we want to look at the facts that Gardasil has been very dangerous. It has caused many sicknesses, many places all over the earth. Even now in Trinidad and Tobago, we are getting reports of some people that have received that injection has begun to get terrible problems from the injection. So, first of all, let us look at a document we have here. The name of the document is 2 Autopsies Reveal Gardasil Antigens Entered Brain, Potentially Triggering Inflammation and Death. And this document was released on November the 30th, 2012. We want to read this document for you, where it shows that 2 young girls died because Gardasil caused inflammation of the brain. Now, usually the doctors will say, oh, we have no evidence that such a thing happened from the vaccine. You know, that's what they usually will tell us. But we usually would ask them, here you have healthy, normal, young children, no autoimmune diseases, no what we call evidences of sickness. And suddenly they get this, and after they get this injection, they get very sick. And some of them die. What's the similarity of all those children? One new thing, one new event entering into their lives before they got sick, and that is the Gardasil injection. If a doctor would judge this way, they would obviously see that the Gardasil injection is responsible for those illnesses. Oh, but they like to follow Merck's defense for Gardasil by saying there is no proof that Gardasil is behind such sicknesses. Gardasil is 90% safe, and they also tell us that it is also effective. I am now reading from this document. I quote, a post-mortem analysis of 2 girls from different parts of the world who died after receiving injections of Merck's human papillomavirus HPV vaccine, Gardasil, has uncovered some astonishing evidence that components of the vaccine may be capable of triggering autoimmune diseases and even death. The study, conducted by Dr. Chris Shaw of the University of British Columbia and Dr. Lucia Tomiljanovic from the Neural Dynamics Research Group in Vancouver and published in the journal Pharmaceutical Regulator Affairs, examined brain tissue samples taken from the deceased girls. The researchers found particles of two HPV antigens used by Merck to produce the Gardasil vaccine. HPV 16L1 and HPV 18L1 were present in both of the brain tissue samples. According to the study, the HPV 16L1 and the HPV 18L1 antigens found in the tissue samples form a genetic fingerprint of Merck's vaccine. In other words, these antigens that were found in the Gardasil vaccine, HPV 16L1 and HPV 18L1, they form a genetic fingerprint for Merck's vaccine, so that you would know, hey, this is Merck's Gardasil vaccine that is responsible for these antigens. So that's the way you know where they came from. They came from Merck's Gardasil injection, and they were found in the brain samples of these two dead girls. I continue to read. The Canadian researchers were alarmed to find that while Gardasil viral antigens should have never crossed the brain-blood barrier, they were actually capable of entering the brain, where they bound to the cerebral blood vessels, triggering severe inflammation, a condition known as cerebral vasculitis that can trigger grave autoimmune disorders and death. End of quote. Did you see that? So these antigens they found bound themselves to the cerebral blood vessels of the brains of these two dead girls, and what did they do? They caused inflammation and eventually death. Yes, my dear people. And here it actually came from Gardasil. Now the point here is that this vaccine or vaccines are not supposed to be able to cross the blood-brain barrier to enter into the brain. But there is something about Gardasil and Cervarix, its sister vaccine, both to deal with the HPV. There is something about them that causes the properties in these vaccines to pass the blood-brain barrier and to enter directly into the brain. And as a result of that, this is what happened. The actual brain itself was attacked by the body's immune system, causing inflammation and death. Let me continue to read for you. I continue, the quote. The analysis showed evidence of an autoimmune vasculitis potentially triggered by the cross-reactive HPV 16L1 antibodies binding to the wall of the cerebral blood vessels in all examined brain samples. The study's authors wrote, "Our study suggests that HPV vaccines containing HPV 16L1 antigens pose an inherent risk for triggering potentially fatal autoimmune vasculopathies." End of quote. And this is what the doctor said. So they're actually saying these properties in the Gardasil vaccine, HPV 16L1 can cause vasculitis. This is what they're saying. Or as they say, vasculopathies. And this is what happened that caused these girls to die. Here is proof. You wanted proof? Here is actual proof. Here we are not doctors, and we can do research and find proof. So here you have proof that it actually causes death. Listen, let me read for you again. Natural News cited Norma Erickson, the president of SaneVax, who explained that for the average medical consumer, the evidence suggests that the antibodies produced in response to the vaccination with the HPV 16L1 may cause one's immune system to attack its own blood vessels, and in this case, in the brain, causing inflammation and causing those two girls to die. My dear people, this is clear proof, scientific proof that the vaccine is dangerous. Then why is the Ministry of Health taking a chance with the life of these young girls in our country with something that has not been proven to be safe. Listen to me, I continue to quote. It says this: given that the autopsy in both cases revealed no major abnormality anatomically, microbiologically, or toxicologically that might have been regarded as a potential cause of death, it appears plausible that the antigen component of the HPV vaccine, HPV-16L1, was indeed responsible for the fatal inflammation of the blood vessels, MS Erickson said. Gardasil has been linked to 121 deaths and nearly 27,500 injuries since the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, approved it in June 2006 to prevent certain types of HPV infections which can lead to cervical cancer. End of quote. Yes, my dear people, so we have given you proof that this vaccine is very dangerous to people. But why was this antigen able to cross the blood-brain barrier? Why? Why to reach there and cause the body's immune system to attack the blood vessels in the brain, causing inflammation and death? Why was it able to do this? This document we have here, the name of it is The Tragic Truth Behind Merck's Gardasil Nightmare. Here is what it tells us. It tells us about Merck's new vaccine and the Cervarix also from GlaxoSmithKline. Here is what it tells us, I quote: "This is a whole new type of vaccine called a virus-like particle VLP vaccine." Did you hear that? A virus-like particle VLP vaccine. Antiviral vaccines have traditionally been prepared by using attenuated or weakened forms of the infectious virus. This type of vaccine involves complications in manufacturing. These brand new virus-like particle VLP-based vaccines, including Merck's Gardasil and GSK's Cervarix, are the first ever FDA-approved VLP vaccines. No long-term studies or studies on populations larger than the Gardasil clinical trial have ever been conducted on VLP technology or the specific interspecies genetic mixing this technology represents. End of quote. Did you see that? So when you're dealing with Gardasil, you're dealing with a whole new type of vaccine. This is called a VLP vaccine, virus-like particles vaccine, the first of its kind of technologies. And it has never been proven to be something safe in people before. Yet here we have these vaccines being used all over the world on young girls, something like an experiment. There is no evidence that this new technology of vaccine is safe. In fact, this vaccine has utilized what we call here in this document interspecies genetic mixing. Yes, my dear people. In other words, you have interspecies gene mixing technology in this vaccine, where you have from rabbit and from insects all mixed together with humans, and the virus taken from animals and also from humans mixed together to create this kind of vaccine. So it is what we call a recombinant DNA, genetically engineered proteins, interspecies gene mixing type of vaccine. And we are told this is a questionable new vaccine technology lacking long-term safety and efficacy data. It is questionable, and there is no real proof that such a vaccine like that is safe for people. And yet this new kind of vaccine for the first time has now been approved by FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and be allowed to be used on children. How horrible this is. How wrong this is. And yet this is what we have going on. We appeal to the Ministry of Health to be very careful and to not allow such a thing like this to happen. You have no proof that this vaccine works. You'll have to wait until 2035 or 2040, the year 2040 to know for sure that it works. But you have no evidence that it works. And yet still you're giving this to little children? Come on, you can do much more better than that. And as I often say, we are not doctors, and look, we know that. Now, here is evidence in this first clip that we are going to show you of the damaging effects of Gardasil on young women. You'd observe the horrible contortion of the body, the destruction of the muscle tone, and the destruction of the mind that has taken place, and even deaths from this Gardasil vaccine in this clip. Take a look at it.
Want her to be one less woman affected by cervical cancer. One less.
But critics question the vaccine maker's aggressive ad campaign, saying it is misleading.
With our pap smear screening program, you have a very low chance of having cervical cancer. So being one less means nothing because you weren't going to be one to begin with.
The study identifies 12,000 medical problems after vaccination. Most are mild, dizziness, headache, and fainting. But there are more than 700 reports of serious medical problems, including blood clots, autoimmune disorders, and 32 cases of death.
Most doctors I know have stopped giving this vaccine because of the safety issues around it now.
As a gynecologist, Dr. Jacques Moritz sees the deadly effects of cervical cancer. He is also the father of an 11-year-old daughter.
I'm not going to have my daughter vaccinated right now.
Why not?
Because I think there's other ways to prevent cervical cancer, the old standards, pap smear, routine exams, and this vaccine, I just don't know enough about it yet.
Scientists say the efficacy of HPV vaccine Gardasil is unsurpassed. But a vocal minority believe the vaccine is making kids sick. And tonight, we investigate claims on both sides of this heated debate.
You had a perfectly healthy child.
Ma'am, GT, honor roll, all A's, cheerleading, basketball, in a youth group at church, singing in the choir, you name it, a healthy child.
9-year-old Constance Couch was so bright, teachers tapped her as tops. GT, gifted and talented, academically, athletically excelling. During her annual checkup, her doctor vaccinated her against the virus that causes cervical cancer, HPV. A week later, she got sick. Her decline was swift and severe, seizures, headaches, weakness. After 3 months in the hospital, Constance awoke a changed child.
I had to redo math because I forgot all my math problems, and I had to learn how to walk again.
Her frail frame can't hold her for long, forcing frequent use of a wheelchair. And learning, once so easy, is now a challenge. But this mom longs for any recovery.
I would give anything to hear anything out of her.
Hobart, Indiana teenager Zeta Pingle was a 13-year-old cheerleader and honor student. She too got Gardasil during her annual checkup.
She had a major seizure 14 days later.
She never recovered. She can neither walk, nor eat, nor speak.
So you had a perfectly normal teenager.
Completely healthy. Not a single thing wrong with her. No broken bones. We went in for a well checkup. And it was time for her to get these vaccines.
4 days after the seizure, her mother watched the light fade from her daughter's eyes, and she blames Gardasil.
If there's anything that you could change, anything you had to do over again, what would you change?
I would research.
Every girl in this room claims to have been harmed by Gardasil.
Raise your hand for me if you had paralysis or limb weakness after the shot.
I have seizures, I have paralysis, I have dizziness and lightheaded every day.
Frightening and frustrating. Finally, finding no answers, a doctor treating Logansport native Hope Zimmerman sent her to the famed Mayo Clinic, conceding in his notes that her debilitating symptoms are possible adverse reactions to Gardasil vaccine. IT mates spent hours poring through these public documents called VAERS reports. The Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System is the mechanism through which anyone can report symptoms experienced following a vaccination. Other girls report the potentially fatal neurological illness Guillain-Barré, or GBS, following Gardasil. Also, hundreds report seizures, muscle weakness, permanent disability.
Raise your hand for me if life has changed extraordinarily after that. Life is forever different.
For them, the Gardasil debate is about neither money, nor politics, nor global cancer prevention. For her, and her, and her, it's about one girl, one life, now changed.
Now, wasn't that horrible? What you saw there with those girls, wasn't it horrible? Oh, but they're not telling you anything about these things. They're not telling you about these results of the vaccine in the bodies of these young girls. And here we just gave you just what you call a little bit of evidence, where we have manifold evidence of these things. And now pay attention to the following clip that we are going to show you here now. It's a doctor being interviewed, and this doctor shows you these 3 points in this clip. Point number 1, he explains about the HPV, the human papilloma virus, and cervical cancer. Point number 2, he explains about Gardasil, the false information given about it, and the danger of Gardasil. And number 3, you will see an actual cure, an actual natural cure for the HPV, the human papilloma virus. Pay careful attention to this clip that you're going to see now.
Welcome back. HPV, or human papilloma virus, is the principal cause of invasive cervical cancer, and statistics show that 20 to 40 million Americans have it. Dr. Clark Hansen from the Hansen Clinic of Natural Medicine is here to tell us about new ways to treat it. It's good to see you, Dr. Hansen. A lot of people are talking about this, especially with the new vaccine that's been out.
It's very scary to moms and young girls, because they're seeing this advertisement all the time about cervical cancer.
Right.
And of course, a woman, when she goes in to get a pap smear, I've heard this over and over again. They go in a week later, they get a call from the nurse, and the nurse says, "You have cancer. You need to get in right away for surgery." And they go, "Cancer?" Of course, what the nurse actually said was, "You have a precancerous lesion, and we need to treat that immediately." But all they hear is cancer.
Right, of course.
This is so common. And they rush in, and they're not explained very much, and they're given a surgery that's actually an amputation of the end of the cervix, all for this virus. I think we have a picture of this.
Yeah, let's take a look. This is the HPV virus, right? That kind of gets everything started.
Right. It is called human papilloma virus because it looks like this kind of papillomatous or wart-like virus, and it causes warts. So it causes genital warts, and it can cause cervical cancer. But it takes 10 years to go from beginning to cancer. So you don't have to rush in the next day and get a surgery. And what I like women to know is there is a natural, non-surgical treatment. It's safe and effective. The body's the real healer. So we don't have to jump immediately, but women hear this word precancerous. They hear cancer, and their doctor scares them to death that they need to go in tomorrow and get a surgery. So conventional medicine knows the surgery is pretty invasive. So a vaccine was developed, and this vaccine called Gardasil.
Yeah, you have hip or horrifying.
Yeah, this is how it's being portrayed to young girls. It's kind of hip to go get this vaccine and be one less. You're going to be one less statistic, one less cervical cancer. So it's being billed as a vaccine to prevent cervical cancer. The studies haven't shown that it prevents cervical cancer. It's only been about, they did about 8,000 women in this study, young girls ages 16 to 26. And now they're giving it to girls as young as 9 years of age, and they've only tested it for 3 years. They haven't shown that it prevents cervical cancer, just HPV. Now, HPV affects 6 million women every year, but only about 12,000 women get cervical cancer. That's only 0.2%. So women don't, again, hear that there are side effects to this vaccine. It's just like all the vaccines, we should get it. And women actually are getting headaches, fever, swelling at the site of an injection, but worse, they're getting fainting, dizziness, paralysis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, and there have been 49 deaths. This really should be recalled. Toyota's recalling millions of cars because there have been 52 deaths from these cars. We've got 28 million doses of this vaccine, and there have been 49 deaths so far.
So what can you do?
So in our office, we do a natural, simple procedure that uses a beautiful herb, sanguinaria root. We have a picture of the flower. The flower is beautiful, and it has this root that has an immune stimulating component that actually kills the virus. So we actually apply this onto the cervix.
It kills the virus?
It kills the virus. We actually do a DNA test in our office. It's FDA approved. It measures these strains of virus that cause cervical cancer, and we can do a before and after test. Do it before we find the virus. We can do the treatment. It takes twice a week for 6 weeks, and then repeat the HPV DNA test, and there's no evidence of the virus anymore. It totally eradicates the virus. No, it's something we have to apply right on the cervix.
Yes, my dear people. Finally, will Dr. Oz vaccinate his children? You've heard of Dr. Oz, this famous doctor on television. Will he vaccinate his children? Here is what the famous doctor says about vaccinating his children.
With such an influence on people and impact of social networking nowadays, let's see exactly what he tells people about vaccines and what he really does when it comes to his own family.
How do you convince the other parents out there that we need to do this?
Careful, I'm going to get it,
yes,
if that helps at all, but I'll tell you, my wife is not going to immunize her kids. Because I've got 4 of them, and when I go home, I'm not Dr. Oz, I'm Mr. Oz. And my wife is not going to immunize her kids. My wife is not going to immunize her kids. My wife is not going to immunize her kids. Because I've got 4 of them, and when I go home, I'm not Dr. Oz, I'm Mr. Oz.
Yes, my dear people, if Dr. Oz can say that about vaccinating his children, what should we do? Should we not follow his example? Yes, we should. Until then, the number you see at the bottom of your screen, 625-0446. If you call this number, we will send this information with others that has gone before for you free of charge. We will either mail it or hand deliver it onto you. Just call the number 625-0446, give us your name and addresses, and we will mail this program and others to you. And what you are seeing passing before the screen here are our various web addresses. All you have to do is to tap into these web addresses and you will get the television program, church programs, documents that we have written, and other important studies, all for your sanctification and for your blessing. And until then, may God bless you until we meet again in Jesus' holy name. Amen.